Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Gemini Capital channel. Today with us is Richard Revelins, CEO of Meryllion Resources. How are you, Rick?
I'm doing well, thank you, Jorge.
Perfect. That's good to hear. So to start things off, Rick, could you provide us with an overview of Meryllion Resources and its mission in the exploration and development of rare earth elements in Tasmania?
Absolutely. Meryllion is a Canadian-listed exploration company, and we're trading on the Canadian Securities Exchange. The company's been effectively in stealth mode for the past 12 months. We've been looking around the world for prospective mining opportunities. And our search has mainly been focused on rare earths, and in particular, Ionic Adsorption Clay, or IAC hosted rare earths. It's our view, our collective view as a board and a company, that rare earths are set to become the next new hot commodity, and demand is expected to strongly exceed supply for the foreseeable future. It's also important to understand the difference between hard rock and IAC hosted rare earths deposits. Hard rock deposits, like those mined by Ionic Resources in Australia and Mountain Pass in California, are massive operations and very CapEx intensive. Hundreds of millions of dollars have to be poured into that sort of infrastructure in order to liberate the metals from their host rock. IAC deposits, in contrast, which are only currently mined in southern China, are far easier and cost-effective to explore and ultimately mine. China, at this present time, accounts for about over 80% of the rare earths production, and much of this comes from these type of IAC-hosted deposits. There's a company on the ASX called ABx Group that has already reported a JORC-classified IAC rare earth deposit in Tasmania. Our geological partners were smart enough and quick enough to secure a very large 500 square mile tenement position alongside and adjacent to ABx Resources. So we've now assembled a very large and highly prospective ground position immediately alongside a known JORC rare earths deposit. And for those of you who don't know, JORC is the Australian equivalent of NI 43101.
Perfect. Well, as you mentioned, the REEs will be the next high in demand element. So we also know that they are essential components for the electric vehicle industry and the defense industry. So with that into account, how does Meryllion Resources plan to contribute and ensure the steady supply of REEs?
Look, as most of us are aware, rare earths are critical for many things. Wind turbines, permanent magnets, which account for about 30% of heavy rare earth applications, electric vehicles, as you mentioned, Jorge, and a multitude of military, electronic, and aerospace applications. Every time you see a missile fired, which we've seen a few of those recently, or aircraft guidance systems of any sort, they contain large elements of rare earths. It's actually a bit of a misnomer to classify these elements as rare when they're not really rare at all. The rare part is finding a deposit where the metals are concentrated in sufficient quantities and grade to make them commercially exploitable. That's the rare part of rare earths. Most analysts that I've read are predicting strong demand for rare earths for the foreseeable future, with demand continuing to outstrip supply. And this is particularly true for heavy rare earth elements, such as neodymium and terbium. Meryllion sits along strike and in the same geological setting as an established IAC rare earth deposit, so we can confidently predict that our tenements are highly prospective for a new rare earths discovery. And we have concentrated neodymium and terbium in the samples that we've analysed so far. unlike hard rock deposits, IAC-hosted deposits can be explored relatively inexpensively and quickly. Now, the metallurgy here is critical. And as we have already seen, we've been able to see recoveries up to 70% using a fairly benign ammonium sulfate leach process, which is environmentally quite friendly and effective and cost effective, which is the most important thing. So the cycle for an IAC hosted deposit from exploration to production is far quicker than for hard rock deposits and a lot cheaper to establish.
Okay. So as you mentioned, Meryllion boasts a high quality tenement portfolio in Tasmania. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the potential of the project, including, as mentioned earlier, the initial sampling rates and the infrastructure accessibility from the project?
Absolutely. We only recently had our exploration licenses granted. So we're looking to get into the field as soon as we possibly can. We have already found surface samples on our ground, grading up to 4,000 ppm TREO. Immediately on our southern boundary, ABx Group recently reported drill intersections as high as 17,333 ppm, which is frankly outstanding. The average grade will obviously be lower than that as you average it across the tenement area, but we know that the areas have the ability to deliver some very high grades. In terms of infrastructure and accessibility, our project area is about 40 minutes drive from the major city of Devonport in Tasmania. Our project can be accessed by sealed highway, and the power grid runs through our property. So in terms of available infrastructure, that's great. And northeastern Tasmania has an established workforce, rail access, and deep port facilities. So everything that you need for a successful mining operation is already there and present.
Yeah, honestly, you couldn't ask for much more regarding infrastructure. Now, what are the key advantages of having a shallow depth target with minimal radioactive elements in your consolidated projects? How does this impact the development of the project?
Well, this is another IAC type deposits. They tend to exist at surface or very close to surface, and they are somewhat homogeneous in nature. You can think of them in terms of large paleo channels. And what this means is they can be drilled using low-cost auger drilling. You actually get really good back establishing a JORC or NI 43101 classified resource can be done far more. In terms,
I think we're losing you, Rick.
Sorry, what happened?
Your internet was kind of going up and down. So maybe we can redo the questions.
Yeah.
That question.
I think you skipped question 3, by the way.
Yeah. I thought that you already covered the diversifying sources, and you already mentioned the China. So
sure.
Yeah.
So we just start from question 5 again.
Yeah. So Rick, what are the key advantages of having shallow depth targets with minimal radioactive elements in your consolidated project, and how does this impact the development of the project?
Okay, this is another major advantage of IAC type deposits. They tend to exist at or very close to surface and are somewhat homogeneous in nature. You can think of them in terms of large paleo channel type deposits. What this means is they can be drilled using low-cost drilling methods such as auger drilling and on much wider line spaces. So in terms of value for money or bang for your buck, exploration and establishing a JORC or NI 43101 classified resource, we can do this far more quickly and far more cheaply than you could with a hard rock deposit. Also, these IAC deposits tend to be very low in terms of radioactive elements, such as uranium and thorium. And that means there should be no complexities at the mining or the processing stage. It also means that permitting should be a lot faster and easier, as we're not having to deal with containing and disposing of these radioactive type materials.
Okay. Now, moving on from the project, I know that Meryllion Resources has a very experienced team. Could you tell us more about your experience and the team experience and how their backgrounds will contribute to the company's success?
Look, we're very fortunate to have Ian Nielsen heading up our exploration team. Ian is a highly competent, experienced, qualified structural geologist. He's worked all over the world for big companies like Placidome and BHP, Newmont, Newcrest. So he has a wealth of experience. He's also one of the vendors of the project. So it was he and his team who identified and pegged these deposits in the first place. So having him on board with his wealth of knowledge, that's a really, really great asset for us to have. In terms of the board of Meryllion, the board is made up of experienced professionals who have successfully managed numerous public companies over their careers, listed on TSX, ASX, the AIM market, and also NASDAQ. And the team collectively has generated billions of dollars in terms of market caps and shareholder returns. So we individually and collectively have taken many companies from a very small exploration type stage to billion-dollar market caps. I was chairman of Atlas Iron, which has been bought out in recent years by Hancock Prospecting, which is Gina Ryan, the wealthiest woman in Australia. We also listed a company called De Grey Mining. That's market of $2 billion currently. And I was also the chairman of Gold Road Resources, which is also trading in excess of $2 billion in market cap. At Meryllion, we're starting from a very low something of significant value for shareholders.
Perfect. So sounds like you really have the team on the project. It's amazing how much value they have created. And finally, can you tell us about the company's capital structure? How many shares are outstanding? How many warrants? And how much percentage is insiders?
Okay. Look, Meryllion's trading on the CSE in Canada, and the ticker code is MYR. There are currently 29.9 million shares on issue, 1 million warrants and 2 million options. In terms of the ownership, management, and I guess you'd say close supporters of the management of the company hold around 85% of the issued capital. So it's a very, very tight capital structure, which I know investors and brokers like to see. So there's not a lot of loose stock floating around. And at our current market price of 4 cents a share, that capitalizes the company at about $1.2 million, which it seems ridiculously low in comparison to the quality of the projects and the excitement, both in North America and worldwide, in rare earths. And I believe we're very well positioned to make a short-term new discovery. So that's where we will be concentrating our efforts and getting into the field as soon as we possibly can.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time, Rick. This has been very knowledgeable, and we'll keep an eye on the stock for sure, seeing what the news comes up.
Okay, thank you very much for the time, and I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Rick.